The last two.
Kal Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Gittin Daf Aleph, Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara. We were talking about, if you remember the elder, that we said in the elder, right, that he knows how to be makneh. You remember the story of the elder, that basically he was lending out money, right? He was an elderly person, but he had a lot of money. He was lending it out. So basically he used to write the document. He used to give it to you. You used to go get it signed with 2 witnesses. You used to come back with the document, and then he would give you the loan. So therefore there, it wasn't done at the same time. And still, why? Because we say that he knew how to be makneh, the document, to the people. But that was a zaken. Whoever told you that a woman knows how to be maknah, a tabla shel etz, to the husband in order to write the get, in order to give it back to her. Elamarava, but rather Rabbi says, me'acha, we learn it from over here. Arev hayotze le'achar chitum shtarot. When you have a shtar al-va'ah that's signed, that they already gave it over. And then afterwards, the malveh came and he gave it to the arev. And he wrote, Bichtav yado va'ani ploni arev. And therefore he became an arev. You know what an arev is? A guarantor. Now there's 2 different types of an arev, by the way. One's a guarantor, a regular guarantor, which means they come to you. If you don't have the money, so then they come to the guarantor. And then there's something which is called an arev kablan. An arev kablan means that they could come to the arev even before going to the guy. It's called an arev kablan. So for example, if you don't want to go to the guy to ask him for the money, you go straight to the arev. And you could get it from the arev. That's called an arev kablan. There are 2 types of an arevs. One is like, it's called an arev kablan. Depends what type of an arev they became. So says the Gemara, right? Here, they already signed the document. They did everything. And all of a sudden, the guy comes and he signs as an arev. Right? So therefore, he's going to be gove the chov from the arev only from nechasim b'nechorim, right? And not from nechasim meshubadim, yeah? It means he can only collect from properties that don't have a lien and not the properties that do have a lien. Why? Because since it's only going to be bichtav yado, it's considered like a milval peh. And therefore, since it's a loan which is done through the mouth and not written anywhere, so you could only collect from the chasim shubadim. Okay? So Amar Ravashi comes and he says, my kushya, right? What's so difficult over here? Dilma gavra shane. Maybe it's different over here, right? The shtarot of a person is different from a woman. Again, he knows how to be makneh. Again, we're always talking about, right, where it's talking about the men or the women. Now, since the women are not always usually in these business transactions, maybe she doesn't know how to acquire it to somebody else in order to give it back to her. You understand? But here we're talking about yes. But rather Ravashi says, me'acha, we learn it from over here. Ha'isha kotevet et kita, v'chen ha'ish kotevet shovro. Do you know that a woman, she's kasher to write her own get, and she could makneh it to her husband, and then he could come and give it over to her to divorce her. And the man could write his own shovar. What does that mean? For paying off the ketubah. Meaning, when he used to pay off the ketubah, right? How do you know that she's not going to come back now and say, you didn't pay me the ketubah? So you have like a receipt. The receipt, right? You're going to have it here. She'en kiyum haget ela bechotamav. Because there's no kiyum haget, right? Only in its signatures. Okay? So you see from here, there's a Mishnah mefureshet that even a woman, we're going to be somchim on this, that she knows this halakha, that she could be maknah. So Amar Rava. Rava comes, and now he's going to say another halakha. Katav la get untano biyadavdo. Okay, so basically what we said before, it comes out that a woman doesn't know how to be makneh. And the proof we learned mefurash that she could write her own get and give it over, and she knows how to be makneh lebala. Now we're going back to what we spoke about yesterday. You remember yesterday we mentioned Rava says if he writes her a get and he gave it to her in the hand of his slave, right, of his eved kanani, the katav la shtar matana alav, and then he wrote a shtar matana on the eved. Okay, kinaato. So she acquires the eved with the shtar matana. And then she becomes divorced with the get which is written on his hand. Because the second that he becomes her property, so now she's going to acquire what's on his hand. What's on his hand? The get.
And
yeah?
Is the slave the keduma?
So even though the Torah said v'natam biyada, you have to give it to her hand, here you're not giving it to her hand. It's being acquired through kinyan chatzer. Because basically he's giving the eved as a present. And once he acquires the eved, now derech agav, that the eved is acquired to her, so to his hand is acquired to her, which is her get. So, but that's going to be okay. So says the Gemara, why? Chatzer me'alechati. This is considered a chatzer, which is transportable. Meaning usually, what's a chatzer? A field. Is a field movable? A field is an inanimate object. It cannot move. This is a chatzer me'alechet. This is like these cars, the sukkah mobiles, right? They're going on. It's going on 4 wheels, right? This is a chatzer me'alechet. The chatzer me'alechet lo kana. A chatzer me'alechet does not acquire for you. What acquires for you? A field, piece of land that acquires for you, because it doesn't move. So you put something in the land, I acquire it. But a chatzer me'alechet does not acquire for you. The chitem, and if you're going to tell me be'omer that he stopped and he's standing still, Rava says, Kol shilu me'alech lo kana, omed v'yoshev lo kana. Says Rava, if right now, right, it's standing, right, it doesn't matter. Because if it would be walking or moving or whatever it is, it would not be koneh. So too here, even though it's standing or sitting, it's not going to be koneh. Which means it's like it's in the rule book of how you make acquisitions. You understand? So you cannot make an acquisition in such a form. So answers the Gemara, V'ilchata what's halacha? Bekafut. They tied him up. And when they tied up the Eved, he can't walk. Right? So therefore, if they tied him up, now it's not a chatzer me'alechet anymore. It's a chatzer neyechet, and therefore what? She acquires it. The Amar Rava says, Katav la get untano b'chatzero. What happens if he wrote her a get and he put it in his own chatzer? The Katav la shtar matana lav. Then he wrote a shtar matana on his own chatzer. Kenatu. She's going to acquire the chatzer. And she's going to come. She's going to be divorced. Why? Her get and her chatzer come in one shot. Says the Gemara, we need both cases. So before it was on the Eved, but the Eved had to be like a chatzer, not me'alechet, so it had to be tied up. And now we're talking about a real chatzer. And again, the shtar matana, so everything was the same. I still needed both cases. Why did I need both cases? If I would have thought on the Eved, I would have thought to say davka Eved, only an Eved you're going to permit it, right? Aval chatzer, but a chatzer ligzar mishum chatzer abalachad miken. I will make a decree that what about in a chatzer which comes afterwards, which means what happens if there's going to be a chatzer which is going to come to a reshut from other people after the husband put the get inside of it? She doesn't acquire it, right? Because at the end of the day, it didn't come together. You know, so what happened? One more time, the husband comes and he writes a get. He puts it in a chatzer. And then David comes and he gives the chatzer to the woman. Right? There's nothing bad happening here, yeah? So he comes and he gives the chatzer to the woman as a present. So now here, we do not say, since it was done by somebody else, we do not say that Gita v'chatzera ba'in ke'echad, because the husband, right, didn't actually give it to her. It didn't come from the koach of the Baal. And the husband, it says, v'natam biyada, he has to give it to her in her hands. So now, if he put it there and then he gave her a shtar matana, it's kilu, and now she acquires it, and now she acquires a get which is inside of it, that is considered that it came from the husband, because both the shtar matana, which is the field, and her get came at the exact same moment to her possession. So even though the husband first put the get in the field, and only afterwards did he give her the shtar matana, but when the shtar matana comes to her hand, it's considered that they both came to her hand at the same time. But if it's a third party, it's not considered that the husband gave it to her. The husband comes, puts a get in your property. You come and you give it to her a present, the property. Even though the get was already there, it's lacking that the husband gave it to her. Because that means she got the shtar matana from you, and now she acquires the field. And now that she acquires the field, now she acquires what's in the field. What's in the field? The get from the husband. But it didn't come at the same moment. It's not coming biyachad, together. When it's the husband giving the shtar matana, it's ba'in ke'achat. It's the same person. Now says the Gemara, why do I need to teach you the case of the chatzer? I would have thought to say davka chatzer only in the chatzer. Aval eved, but in an eved ligzor, maybe I'm going to make a gzera kafuta to sheno kafut. Right? The majority of the times, is a slave tied or not? No. So I would have made a decree, you know what? When he's giving over his eved, and then he's giving a shtar matana to her for the eved, I would say it doesn't help. Why? Because the majority of the times, an eved is not going to be tied up. So if I only taught you the din of the chatzer, I would have said eved doesn't help. Why? It's a chatzer me'alechet. He's tied up. I'm going to make a gezerah. You're tied up, not to tied up. Mashmalan, that as long as he's tied up, we do not make such a decree. Okay? Amar Abaye says, Michti, let us see. Chatzer meicha et Rabbi. How do you know that a chatzer can acquire a get mina Torah? How do we know? So says the Gemara, Miyada, we learn from Midata Miyada. Mayada, just like her hand, de'ita ben midata ben shbal kolcha. Right? It's whether it's against her will or not. sorry, meaning, for example, thank you, right? Let's say, for example, he throws it into her hand and she catches it, right? Whether she wanted or not, now she realizes it's her get, but at the end of the day, right, this is the halacha. Af chatzera, so to her chatzera is to the bad. It doesn't matter whether it's midata or bal kolcha, it's the same thing. The hamatana, but 1 second. But if it's going to give it as a present, midata, like a present, no. Because a present is only if you want it. If you don't want to acquire a present, you don't have to take a present against your will, right? Which means that get which was given, right, to her in the chatzer of the husband, that she's getting it as a present, that is only midata. But if it's shalom midata, she does not acquire it. But miyada, right, that's whether it's midata or ben krucha, it still works. Okay, that means her chatzer is even against her will, because it's like her hand. But a present is never, you're never obligated to accept a present. If I come and I put something into your hand, right, and right, he likes the idea, yeah, right. So I put it. So then it's whether he wanted or not, it's already in his hand. Right, it's already there.
You've been served,
right? You've been served, exactly. You understand? But not right. So the same thing with your chatzer, okay? Matri Rav Shimi Barashi, right? Asks Rav Shimi Barashi, the hashlichut lekabbalah. But what about shlichut, which is the kabbalah? Temidata ita bal korcha leta. Right? What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? You have shlichut the Kabbalah. Midata, right? What does that mean? Midata shel isha, ita, you have the girushin. But bal kulcha, right? Leta, you don't have it. The kavi shliach the Kabbalah, and here you're shliach the Kabbalah. What does that mean? You have something which is called the shlichut the Kabbalah. What's shlichut the Kabbalah? I'm going to send a messenger to receive it from you. There, it's also only midata. Bal kulcha, you don't have. But 1 second, but he's the shliach the Kabbalah. Right? And therefore, if it's only going to be mitzvah that she's mitkareshet, not if it's not mitzvah. So therefore, you should say the same thing to do with kinyan chatzeh. What's the difference between a shliach or a field? A chatzeh, we said, no. The chatzeh is like your hand. Whether it's midata or bal korcha. Here you have a shliach, right? And a shliach lekabbalah. Why do we say there that it has to be only midata and not bal korcha? It should be the exact same thing. Abaye says, Atu shlichut miyadai tarabed. He says, no, shlichut is different than her hand. V'shilach v'shilecha itrabe. It says in Devarim, v'shilach and v'shilecha. What does that mean? They're learning, but you don't have to actually, the yad of the shliach doesn't have to be domel yada, that it's going to help even bal kulcha. But a chatzer, they do learn from yada. Meaning, if you learn it from the yada, then it could be even bal kulcha. But if you don't learn it from the yada, so then it cannot be bal kulcha. So the same thing. Meaning, since shlichut, you don't learn it from the yada, so it has to be only b'mirtzonayim if she wants it. She doesn't want it, it doesn't help. Right? Why? Because you could always say by a shliach that I wanted you to do something to help me, not to make it worse. Yeah, by the way, that's halacha. If I come and I send you to be my messenger, and you came and you botched up the deal, you messed it up royally, I could say I sent you to fix things, to help me, not to go against me. Meaning, if you're my messenger, you're on my behalf to help me, not to make things worse. So for it, you're not my messenger. I renounce the messenger, right? You could do that.
Afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards. Yeah. The Baitema, if you want, you could answer. Shlichut lekabbalah nami ashkecham bal kulcha. No, there is a concept of shlichut lekabbalah, which is bal kulcha. Shekena av mekabel get lebito ktana bal kulcha. How do you divorce a minor? Only through the father. So how do you divorce the minor? You give it to the father, the get, and he's going to watch it for the bito ktana. That's bal kulcha. It's against her will. A ktana doesn't have will, whether it's willingly or not willingly. A minor doesn't have will. So the father comes and he accepts the get for the daughter. That's called, right, shlichut lekabbalah, which is bal kulcha, right? Nekuda. Okay, fine. 2 dots. Ala eleh shel zayit. We said in the Mishnah you could write the get on anything, even on eleh shel zayit, right? And then on the keren of the para and all the other things. Remember when it says vechule, it means on everything. Bishlama yad eved says the Gemara. I understand that you could divorce on the hand of an eved, right? And therefore he has to give her the eved, right? Now you can't just give the get, right, on the hand. You have to give the entire eved. Why? Kafalef amubet 21b. Lo Shalom because you can't cut it off, right? You can't just cut off your eved's hand. Meaning, if you wrote the get on the eved's hand, you can't just cut it off. So obviously, he has to give over the entire eved. Ela keren shel para, but we said in the Mishnah, keren shel para, right? You're allowed to write on the horn. So liksi evlit for them. Cut it off and just give it to her. Why do you have to give her the entire para? Why do you have to give the entire para? Cut off the horn and give her just the horn. Why? Says the Gemara Markra, says, you're right, that was the Sefer of Mishnah. Markra, the Pasuk says, V'katav v'natan la, Mishe'enu mechusar al k'tiva v'netina, Yatza ze shemechusar k'tiva k'tzitza v'netina. It says, V'katav v'natan. You write it, and you give it over. So learns the Gemara, from the fact that it's written there, V'katav v'natan, which means you write it, and you give it over, it has to be that it's not lacking anything in the middle. Meaning there's no extra step in the middle. It has to be you wrote it, and you gave it. Okay. If right now you write it and then you have to cut it off, that's an extra step. That extra step disqualifies a get. It has to be v'katav v'natan, right? So therefore you have to cut it off before. You cut off before and then write it. Okay, fine. Okay.
So you don't have to give the cow.
No, technically you could write it before. Yeah, cut it off.
But in the Mishnah,
yeah, well, obviously because there we're talking about if you're writing it on it, you cannot cut it off. So you have to actually give over the cow the way that it is. Okay, next two dots. Rabbi Elmaleh says, right, that what? That you're not going to write the get. So this is what Mordechai mentioned. Remember, there can be something which is alive or an ochel. Right, now remember, one more time. When you have the two dots and then it says chule, it means many times it's on the continuation. Because right now, what did he quote? He just quoted Rabbi Elmaleh, but you don't know what he said. I added it in because here it adds in what he actually said in the Mishnah. Technically, I could have gone back to the Mishnah and I would have quoted you in the Mishnah, but it's just much easier because you have it right here, right down, right? But you have it. So my time at Rabbi Elmaleh, what's the reasoning of Rabbi Elmaleh? That he says it's going to be pasul to use a bal chai, an animal, or on a food. The time is we're going to write a sefer. What does it mean? V'katav la sefer keritut. Only a sefer. That's only a sefer. How do you know that it could be on anything? But if you say sefer, it has to be on a cloth. It's a cloth. It's going to be. But nowadays they don't use parchment. You go to write a get. They use regular paper. It's not the regular paper, line paper, because you're not allowed to use lines, right? But it's a special paper. But it's usually papers that they use for drawings and things like that. That's what they use. But they don't use special paper, right? It's a regular paper. Yeah. So he comes and he says, yeah. So how do you know you've been so anything you want, you can write her. Right? In Ken of so why does it say sefer there? It says no. Just like a sefer is something that's not alive and it's not a food. So too is anything which is not alive and not a food. Which means the reason why it was written sefer was to teach you this shita, right? That it cannot be a balchai or right anything else. But mitzad sheni though, right? Mitzad sheni though, when we're talking about anything, it could be mikol makom, anyway, right? But that's what it says. V'katav la mikol makom, any on anything you can write it on. Okay? V'rabbanan, hay v'katav ma'avdil. Okay, fine, but what do the rabbis use for the extra v'katav la? Because at the end of the day, the chachamim are the ones that are coming and saying, what are they going to say? Right? Because according to Rabbi Yosef Galilei, the word sefer is on the cloth, and therefore v'katav la is adding everything else. Okay, and which means everything else, but it cannot have ruach chaim or ochen. But according to Tanakama, the word sefer is you have to write the get, right, and not on anything which is what it's written on, right. So therefore, we know that it's going to be kasher, right, to write on anything. So what is v'katav then? V'katav is extra, yeah. So he comes and he says, Rabbanan hay v'katav ma'avdile. Mibayle needs it b'chtiva mitkareshet, ve'ena mitkareshet bekesef, right. That means she's only going to be divorced on what? On ktiva, on something, but not by money. Meaning, how does she get into the marriage? Kesef, shtar, ubiyah, right? That means shtar, a document, is one of them, right? But also kesef. So I would have thought to say, you know what? Maybe she's going to be mitkareshet with kesef. He gives her $1 and he tells her, get lost. Yeah, okay, fine. He has to give the ketubah. Remember, the ketubah is something. What?
There's no mitkareshet with
no. Yeah. Sal kadaita chamina. Yeah. He comes and he said, Sal kadaita chamina. I would have thought to say, yeah, Akish, 1 minute, yeah. I would have thought to say, I'll tell him the story in 1 minute. Yeah, 1 second. Akish yitzia, ma havaya, rayla yitzia, lavaya, ma havaya bekesef, av yitzia bekesef. Kamash we don't say that, which means it is. I would have had a havamina that just like when she comes into the marriage, she uses kesef. When she goes out, you could also get rid of her with kesef. Kamash we don't say that. The ida and the other one, which is of Yosef Galilei, how does he know that she cannot be mitkareshet only with a shtar girushim? So nafkalemi sefer kritut says sefer kritut. Sefer kurta, a sefer cuts off. Money doesn't cut off. The idach, the other one, which is chachamim, they need it, the kritut, they need it, something which cuts off between him and her. Like the Tanya, as we learned in the Braita, what happens if a person comes and he says, you know what, you're divorced, but on condition you never drink wine. Or on condition, you never go to your father's house. And that's not sefer kritut, because that means she's still attached to him. There's still strings attached. The second that there's still strings attached, she's not divorced. Ad 30 yom, however, though, if you only gave a time period of 30 days, she is divorced. Why? Because that's a try that you could still live with. Right? If she said never, no, never say never. Right? But if it's going to be a 30 days, okay, fine. So after 30 days, that's it. She's 100% divorced. The Yidach, another one, mikoret kritut. He learns it from the fact that it's written sefer. He could have just said sefer koret. Why does it say sefer kritut? We also learn this, that has to be koret ben olamina. Meaning it's not only just something which is a sefer kritut, that is korta, that is sefer korta, ve'en varacher korta, but it's also has to be koret ben ovena. The Yidach, another one, he doesn't like this koret, kritut. The rabbis don't like this, no, you could have written this way, the other way. They don't like this. Okay, so we're by the Mishnah. Mishnah. Mishnah towards the bottom. You're not allowed to write anything which is going to be connected to the ground. If you wrote it on something which is connected to the ground. And then you detached it, and then you signed it. And then you gave it to her, it's going to be kasher. Why? Because the chatimot came after the detaching. Rabbi Yehuda is posel the entire get until the entire thing is going to be detached. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda says, you're not allowed to write not on anything which is going to be erasable, right? On something which was erased, meaning on niyar, which was something and then they erased it. Not on klaf, which is not mu'bad. Because you can forge it. And Chachamim come and they mashir this get. Says the Gemara, if they write it on something which is going to be mechubar, you told me in the Reisha that you don't write it on something which is mechubar. Now you're going to tell me that it's going to be that you're allowed to write it on mechubar lakarka. What's going on over here? I don't understand you. No, you left over the main part of the get, meaning you detached it and then you wrote the main part of the get. That's what Rabbi Elazar says in the name of Mashiach. That you left over the main part of the get. You left over makom hatoref. Rabbi Elazari, and this is going to be Rabbi Elazar. The Amar that he says, edem esira karte. What does that mean? The edim of the ones which are giving over, those are the ones which cut off the marriage. That's what it means, edem esira karte. The hachikam, this is what it means, say, en kotvin tofes, you're not going to write the tofes, shemichtov toref. So you don't write the tofes, because maybe you're going to come and write the toref. Remember, the tofes is not the main part of the get. The toref is the main part of the get. Right? Always makom torpa or makom toref, that's like the main part. Okay? So he says, kitavo tofes, if you write the tofes, right? Utlasho, and then you came and you detached it. Kitavo toref, and then you wrote the toref, v'natanla, and then you gave it to her, v'natrula, they give it to her, right? Kasher, it's going to be kasher b'diavad. The Shaki says, chatamo shanini. Where the Mishnah, in the Din Mishnah, is talking about the chatimot, which were done betalush. And therefore the get is going to be kasher, even though everything else was going to be done b'mechubar, Rabbi Meir, and it's Rabbi Meir. Tamar de chatima karte, because according to Shtat Rabbi Meir, he holds the de chatima karte, which means the chatimot do everything. The get is nothing until the chatimot. So therefore, Damar de chatima karte, v'achigam, this is what we say. En kotvin toref gizera shemiyachtom, you lechatchila don't write the toref. Right? Why? Because maybe you're going to sign it. But if you did write the Torah and then you detached it and you signed it, it's going to be kasher b'diavad. So b'diavad it's still going to be good. That means even lechatchila, Rabbi Meir still says you're not allowed to do it because maybe you're going to sign it. But b'diavad it's going to be kosher. Imagine you wrote it on a piece of pottery, but it's on an atzitz nakuv. Remember, atzitz nakuv means that it's got a hole on the bottom, so therefore it takes its nourishment from the ground. Right? It's got a hole, nekef. Right? Atzitz nakuv. Kasher, it's going to be kosher. The Shaki Lev Yaiv Le Nahala, because he could come, pick it up, and bring it to her. Al Alesh Latzitz Nakuv. If you wrote on the leaf of an Atzitz Nakuv, Abai Amar Kasher. Abai says it's going to be kosher. V'Rav Amar Pasul. Rav says it's going to be pasul. Abai Amar Kasher. Abai comes and he says it's going to be kasher. The Shaki Kavet Amudalef on the top. The Shaki Lev Yaiv Le Nahaleh, because he could just cut it off and give it to her. What does that mean? He could take the entire Atzitz and just give it to her. But Rav comes and he says it's going to be pasul. Gezerah Shemayiktom. Maybe it's going to be a gezerah. Maybe you're going to come and you're going to